Hi, Ben.
Hi, Carl.
How are you?
I'm good. It's been a while since it's just been the two of us. Like, it's so nice. It's refreshing. Like, yeah,
I
good to
know.
hang.
And I'm so tempted to sing. I'm so tempted to sing just the two of us, but I don't want to embarrass myself or have any copyright issues, so I'm just going to save all of us the heartache. Um,
Thank you.
I want to dive straight in. You're welcome. I want to dive straight in. So, before we hit record, you mentioned the idea about, maybe we could talk about, things that we would do differently if we were starting over. And I do like that concept. I do like going back and, giving advice to, you know, 18-year-old Carl, right? However, I think a slight change to that angle, a slight adjustment to that is not just what would we do differently if we had to start over, but what would we do differently if we could transport 18-year-old Carl, 18-year-old Ben to 2024?
Oh,
And what would 2024 young Ben and Carl have to do differently than what, early 2000s Ben and Carl had to do?
right. You know what? To be honest, I was kind of thinking like today, anyways. Like, what would we do today if we were starting over, as opposed to like
Yeah.
the conditions of our beginnings were so different than the conditions that exist today, right? Like, what a different landscape.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, even just like technology is the obvious one, like, yeah, like uh, at when I first started in college, I took 1 year of recording arts classes because I started out as a recording major and ended up switching to performance. But I remember freshman year, like we were using radar.
hmm,
Like we weren't fully like we weren't like in the box, but we weren't using tape. We were using like the worst of both worlds
yeah,
in my experience. But like the technology, obviously from 2003 when I started to 2024, like, yeah, that's going to be different. No shit. But I think the recording technology aside, I think just society is so different. And the way that humans make connections, the way that humans make art, the way that art is spread and consumed is just complete, just a different universe than it was.
yeah.
So that's kind of why I was thinking that might be a really interesting retrospective of what are the things that, not just what are the things that we would do differently, but also what are some of the things that are still true? What are some of the things that you would have done differently then and would do differently now?
Yeah.
Some of the things that maybe still stood the test of time, despite all of the changes in technology, despite all of the changes from like social media.
Right. Yeah. That's so good. Um, I think, yeah, without jumping the gun to what I would do, I just think it would just like, it would be the same thing, but it would be in a different, it would just look different because of the way the world is, you know? It would be similar, but different, you know? It would maybe be more gravitated online versus in person, you know? Um, yeah.
I'm gonna poke you and make you elaborate on that
Uh,
because I love you, Ben. That was such a
Yeah,
non-answer.
yeah. Well, okay. So should I here's the main thing that I was thinking
Yeah,
about.
just go,
Here's
go,
the main
go,
thing I was
go
thinking about.
deep.
This is why I wanted to do this episode. So when I got started, like I've told people this, like I just sort of like I couldn't get a gig or an internship at any studio because like I started at like the worst possible time to start doing recording when like all the big studios were closing. Everyone's like, no, I just work for myself now. Like nobody wanted me around. And so I was like, okay, I guess I'm going to just do this by myself. And I think the mistake I made was I just opened up shop. Like, okay, I guess I'm a business now. I'll just take in clients and start recording them. And I think I did that way too soon. And I think not that it's not important to open a business, like I'm all about that, but at the time I was like, I guess I'm going to like, make a shop, and put up flyers and stuff rather than finding artists I could collaborate with and grow together with. And I think my approach was just like, I guess I'm a business, when I think in retrospect, when you're getting started, you want to find your people. and you want to find people to collaborate with and to like make a movement even with the artists that you can work with. And now back in the day, that would have been in the town I was in, right? And so like whether it was in New York or in Jerusalem, just like finding my people and starting to like, let's make a song together, or let's like explore creative ideas together and see where that goes. And I'm like messing around with this, technology and the DAW and all this recording gear. Like, let's see what we can do together. And yeah, I did a little bit of that, but I think it was more of like, oh, let's just try to like get clients to record, as opposed to let's find people to collaborate with. And these days, it could be anywhere in the world. And you know, back then it was just Facebook. I think was like the only social media when I got started. And today it's like, you have I mean, I guess all owned by Meta now, but there's Instagram, and you're just everybody's available to you, right? You could just DM anybody, and so why not just find artists that you happen to find, whether it's via the algorithm or friends and recommendations that you just like vibe with, and just be like, hey, I'm like working on beats, or I'm trying to play bass on songs, or I'm trying to mix. Like, what can we do together? I just love your music. Rather than hire me now, please. I would love to like start making money doing this. And I think, yeah, like don't jump the gun. I think like before you can like open up shop, you need to sort of, mark your territory as like a creative in a world, in an environment, in a scene, whatever you want to call it. And I think that's something I wish I fostered more of at the very beginning of when I was starting. And I think that's what I would do today, of like just message people you resonate with and just see how you could potentially collaborate, and just like see how you get your creative juices flowing with like zero strings attached. That's sort of my like, yeah, that was my answer. What do you think?
Yeah. What's interesting is I would do the exact opposite. But I think but it's because that approach is what I did. When I started out, especially as a session drummer and gigging drummer, I was just like, I need to play with as many people as I can. I just want to like make friends and make music and see where it can take us. And if it goes somewhere, great. And I wish that I actually had spent the time to understand what the business side of it would be like, because I didn't know anything about it. I mean, I was playing like $50 a night gigs for years because that was just what, people offered to pay me. And I didn't know that you could ask for more money. I just didn't have that experience. I didn't know what I didn't know. And for me, I wish that I would have had a bit more of a business background, not just so I could make more money or I could make money sooner, but so that way I could be more conscious of what a good opportunity actually looks like versus a bad opportunity, right? Because I feel like I used to make my decisions in the beginning based on what looked like a fun opportunity, and fun opportunities aren't always good for you. So I think maybe, I would actually, I would argue this. I would say that I think probably what I would do is, what I would recommend for, if young Carl was here today, or if there's any, younger audience members listening right now, I think I would go back and I would actually take parts of what Ben said, parts of what I said, and try to find that balance. Try to understand that it's easy to get sucked into one side or the other. It's really easy to get sucked into going down the business rabbit hole, and it's really easy to go down the, hey, let's have fun. Let's do what, art for art's sake rabbit hole. And I think trying to be aware that there is a balance that is necessary to be able to be successful in this industry, and always kind of keeping that balance somewhere on the horizon, like a lighthouse, just to kind of keep you grounded, rather than going super deep into one way or the other and kind of losing sight of that balance, losing sight of how to make money while also working with artists that you like, or getting paid, finding ways to get paid by artists you like to work with. That's really the goal. And I feel like younger producers and engineers, but also like session musicians, aspiring, full-time musicians, we feel like it's kind of one or the other. Either we are trying to make as much money as we can, or we're trying to make as much cool art as we can. And we feel like they have to be like mutually
Mm,
exclusive, and they don't. They only become mutually exclusive when you dive too deep into one and neglect developing your skills and your awareness of how to grow on the other
wow.
side.
Yeah, that's so good. I was like thinking like, okay, you took off in like LA and I took off at New York at like the exact same time, and then we like crossed over somewhere over, I don't know, Oklahoma, Homa. I don't know, where would you where would you cross over? I don't even know. And then we both
I
landed
don't know.
in the other city. um, I'm just kidding, but
Yeah,
no, but I love that. I think that's like let's figure out. Like maybe we could figure out now, like just like a way to cultivate a life where you're sort of figuring out how to get that artistic, creative fulfillment, and at the same time being smart about money stuff. You know, I don't know. Like I feel like there is a time where you just
yeah.
need to like go out on a limb and try to do something creative for the sake of it, because otherwise you're never going to like push that needle, even if there's nothing, no money involved. And then there's a time where you just need to set boundaries and charge money, and also there's that place where it all coalesces. But yeah, but I think at the very beginning of your career that doesn't necessarily coalesce. So how can you like cultivate that kind of happy medium?
Okay, so I don't fucking know.
We're supposed to give people advice,
I
Carl.
mean, I know. I'm sure it'll come to me. No, I mean, I guess my it's tough. Like, I guess that's the thing. It's saying to do it, saying that it's important, and giving somebody advice on how to do it are two very different things. And I feel like it's very easy to say, yeah, you got to
Well,
balance it,
how would you do that
right?
today as
Um,
Carl in
but
2024?
yeah, so that's what I'm going to say. Like, let's try to figure this out. I feel like it's a very deceptively difficult question, but I think that we can kind
Okay.
of
I like that.
talk this out. So I think I, I think honestly, a very simple thing to do is to take even some very basic business classes. I think that's a really good start, because I feel like anybody getting into this kind of position, right? They're probably already, it's much more likely that they're already taking a lot of music classes or like taking lessons and things, uh, and choosing to go into the business side of it versus people taking a whole lot of business classes and then thinking to themselves, I want to do music with all of this knowledge, right? Like that doesn't happen, because if they're naturally drawn to the business side and they want to make money, they're going to go literally fucking anywhere besides the music industry, right? So most likely people are coming from the musical background and then thinking, okay, maybe my skills are marketable enough. Maybe there is a chance for me to make a career out of this. And they kind of skip the step of learning about the business. So they just go right. I think kind of like what you were saying, where it was like you went right from growing your skills, getting better at it, making cool music, and all of a sudden it's just like, well, I'm going to start charging money for this, rather than learning about supply, like how supply and demand affects our clients, and how leads, like generating leads, is like the single most important thing that you could be doing in any business, but especially in the music industry. And how like everything when it comes to getting clients and making great music and getting paid and having a career and having stability, it all comes downstream from generating leads. But yet that's like the one thing that nobody learns about, nobody teaches you, which is why I'm such a dork about teaching this to like all of my students, whether they're you know 20 and in college, or they're in their 50s and have been doing it for 30 years, and they've got multiple Grammys, but they just don't know. They've never had to like find clients for themselves. They've always worked for studios. So I think that's probably the biggest thing that I would do, is to say, okay, you know for every music class that you take, you should take like a writing class. You should take a communications class. You should take a marketing class. Because I think those are the skills that you need to kind of balance it out. And whether or not you're taking those classes, even just reading the books, finding some YouTube channels that you really enjoy that talk about those
Yeah.
topics so you can learn about it
Eventually, by
to kind of like
yeah, you'll
balance
you'll get it
out.
by
Yeah.
osmosis, or you'll just like slowly pick things up and like figure it out.
Yeah, absolutely. In the same way that we learn music, like you don't get great at mixing overnight. You don't get great at playing bass overnight. Like these are things that they're hugely monumental
Oh yeah,
tasks when you really think about it, and you get there gradually. And I think the problem is when people spend so much time building their skills and their like techniques, and and all of a sudden, they spent like 10 years, working on this one thing, and then when they go to start learning the business side, they kind of forget that they start at,
right,
ground
right,
level for that side of it, and then they get discouraged because music is easy
right.
and business is hard for them because they haven't spent that time. And I think that's the longer you go without learning some of those basic business concepts, those basic marketing concepts, the communications concepts, the longer you go without that, the harder it's going to be to, I guess, emotionally, go back to
Yeah. Wow.
the
This
drawing
is
board,
really
so
good.
to speak.
This is really good
It's not
advice. I think this
impossible.
is really great
Yeah.
because I think, yeah, it's just like keep doing all that music stuff, but don't forget this is this is coming. But what I would say is that, and going back
Yeah.
to my original thesis, uh, is that like even if you're learning about all this stuff, you don't necessarily need to be doing this on day one. I think like okay, like you talked about lead generation, so you can't just like start marketing and have leads before you've done anything, right? You need to have your first, you have to have done something.
But how do you get to the
Well,
point of having done
that's
that something? You got to start
exactly,
conversations. You got to
exactly.
find. So it's the lead generation. Like lead generation doesn't just mean for money. Like if you
Yes.
got to build your portfolio, you got to work on music
And
to
that,
build your portfolio. So you still have to generate the
exactly.
leads.
So
You still have
that's
to
kind
get
of
those
like
conversations going.
starting
Yeah,
with
yeah,
that
yeah,
community. And then like you have to build a
yeah.
ground, like a ground zero community of like, these are people that I've worked with and we've made things together. And now that I've made something with these people, I have what to show. And also they're going to tell some friends. And that's going to begin the sort of like, the wheels, the grease, is in the, there's grease in the wheels now turning to like start getting that lead generation going and like the business speak sort of thing.
Yeah.
So it's like it's two sides of the same coin, I guess is what we're getting at, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's yeah. So I guess I think that would be my advice. I knew we'd get there eventually. I just it's but yeah, I think that's it. I think it's just, like you said, like not necessarily feeling like you have to like dive into the application of the business things that you're learning, but just to become aware of them and be able to spot them and start to be able to figure out what actually does apply to your business as an engineer, your business as a session player, your business as a, I don't know, like private music teacher or whatever that is, but being aware of it and starting to slowly have that be part of your everyday awareness. So you start to look for those opportunities and you see the opportunities that maybe you wouldn't notice if you were only doing art for art's sake, or also seeing really cool artistic creative opportunities that you might have passed up if you were only trying
Exactly.
to get paid. So it really is that balance. And I know that it sounds like I'm harping more on the business side of things, but I think that's because for most of us, we already have all of the musical background. Like that part, I don't need to convince you to spend more time watching, you know, YouTube videos about how to mix better. I mean, not that I ever suggest you watch YouTube videos about getting to
But
mix better. That's a whole
ooh,
other
that's interesting
that's another slide.
topic. Right.
But
But we've all been there.
yeah, like oh yeah, don't get me
uh,
started on that. But side note, I don't think I mentioned this in the podcast, but I would love to start a tribute band where we only do covers of the shitty songs used in plugin tutorials.
That's the most niche cover band of all time.
it is very niche, but I feel like I mean we could do like the festival circuit, but it would be like we play at
And that's
NAMM, we
it.
play at AES, you know. Anyway, um, I digress. But yeah, but I'm talking mostly about like the business and marketing side of things because that's the part that most people listening to this have the least amount of experience in. They have way less experience in that than they do actually doing the thing, like mixing and producing
Right, because
and whatever that
that's where
is.
we want to
And I
go.
think
That's what we want
just
to do.
yeah, and well, that really brings me to maybe if I had to bring it, not necessarily bring it to a close. I mean, like, really put a bow on my advice to younger Carl and younger Ben. It's just to get them to realize that being great at your craft is not enough, and to not look at that as a negative thing. Look at that as an opportunity for you to become a much more
Yeah,
well-rounded
and
creative. Because now you have to be outside of just the music, you also have to be able to communicate, your passions to potential clients. You have to be able to, you know, make, just expressing yourself becomes a multi-dimensional multimedia experience for us. It kind of has to be in today's like society. And you can either go into that with a grumpy old man shaking your fist at the clouds kind of a mentality, or you can say, oh, this is cool. People actually want to get to know me, not just listen to my mixes. They actually care about how I feel about music. They actually care about the perspectives that I have and the experiences that I have. Like, to me, that's really fucking cool. Right. And like, it's exciting to me that people want to listen to me and care about me and that they want to have conversations and dialogue. And to me, like, that's actually what makes this so great because I always say music is a social sport, right? And like I'm not doing this to just kind of sit in my dark room and keep the windows, all the sunlight blocked out and get files, and then do my things and email back over the files and we're done. Like that would not be fun at all for me. And I think that's probably not going to be fun for you know everybody on here that's not a mastering engineer. That's a little jab at mastering engineers, but I love you.
we love
You're
the
you're all
mastering
great. I'm
engineers.
just kidding. Um, yes, I'm just
Yeah, you're
I'm making
throwing
fun of the
shade,
stereotype of mastering engineers. Yes, I am throwing shade through the
blocking out the
window that is
sunlight.
already
Yeah,
blackout curtained. Yeah. Where was I going with this?
the social sport, the
Social sport. Yeah. Um, and I think it's you can look at the necessity of social media for growing your business as a negative thing that is just forcing you to do more than the the service that you were drawn into this industry to do. Or you could look at it as a great thing where it's an opportunity to make more meaningful connections with your clients, with growing a network of really great friends and peers and other musicians that you can look up to and that can look up to you. And I I feel like I'm much more of a glass half full
yeah.
kind of guy in this
It's
topic.
it's like also even if you are a glass half empty kind of guy or gal, then it doesn't matter because this is the state of the industry, right? Like so, like get with the program
Yeah,
or like take a break until it moves on to the next thing, which who the hell knows what that will be. Like we just have to roll with the punches here. So you have to figure out a way to incorporate both your creativity and your sort of business sense. And yeah, so like there's no choice in the matter. It's like either get on board with it, figure out, or hire someone to help you with it,
yeah,
or But like I really like what you were saying about just kind of like read this, do this, like while you're doing that. Like just those little things I think will help you sort of like you don't
yeah,
have to actually get a master's in business. You just have to like sort of like familiarize yourself, and over time, because all these things take a long time. The craft takes a long time. So while you're doing the craft, you also do that. And like we talked like in
yeah,
the beginning of the year, we talked about our goals that we're setting for ourselves, and I wanted to learn more about finance. I wanted to become more financially literate, so to speak. And I don't think I'm there yet, but I've read a few things, I've learned a few things, and just like engaging conversations. It's just sort of like in the back of my head of like everywhere I'm going, this is something I'm trying to figure out. And so like by osmosis, I'm just like becoming more aware of these things. And like, even though I'm not necessarily where I wanted to be at the beginning of the year, I've definitely, my understanding is much deeper than it was, just because I'm constantly kind of, I have an ear out for these things. You know what I mean? I'm just like kind of like walking
Yeah.
around. Oh, that's interesting. You know? So it's just sort of like, just that awareness is so much. You know what I mean? Like this is something that, this is part of the program. You know,
Yeah.
get with it or move on, and just like have that in your head. You know?
The thing we have to remember is that to get from, not knowing what we don't know to knowing it really well and being able to do it really well, we have to get through that awkward, like, puberty phase of knowing what we don't know, right? Or like being aware of the fact that there's a lot of stuff that we don't know. And until that point, you can't really make any progress and get closer to actually knowing it, right? So it doesn't mean that we're going to become super successful entrepreneurs overnight, that we're going to just master business in, a month after reading one book or taking one class. But it's that first step of just becoming aware of what it's like outside of our small little music bubble, and like you said, becoming aware of it, noticing things, and you start to notice, well, what are some things that this producer is doing or this musician's doing that is working really well, or well, this producer is really really great, but they don't seem to be doing anything anymore. Like, or they're barely, only doing like one or two albums a year, but they're like my favorite producer. Like, what's going on? And you start to just like notice some of the good and the bad of how other people are running their businesses, and you start to take little pieces of it and you learn from that. In the same way that we listen to bands and we listen to other engineers and we notice things that we like about what they did, we notice things that we don't like about what they did, and we adapt it and kind of create our own version of it, and it influences our tastes. And I think the exact same thing will happen with business. And I think what I've seen too is once you get that bug, once you start to go from you don't know what you don't know into realizing how much there is to learn, I think a lot of us by nature are lifelong learners. We get excited about not knowing something because we want to figure it out. We want to adapt it. We want to approach it in a new way that nobody else has really approached it before. And I think a lot of us kind of can start diving real deep into the business side of things because we're fascinated by it. And I think that is where finding that balance in between becomes just as important, but just for the complete opposite side, where it's really easy to go super, super down the business development rabbit hole and then lose sight of the art that you've been making your whole life. Lose sight of the passion that you have for the music because your goal now is to figure out how to make as much passive income from, I don't know, ebook sales or sample packs or whatever as possible, and how to automate everything. And like, it's just, it's going too far, down the western side of the slippery slope as opposed to the eastern side where it's all, prog rock and avant-garde jazz, where I also spent plenty of time. So I can make fun of that mentality because I
Yeah.
lived it for a long time. Does that make
Yeah.
sense though? Like,
I,
how it's
I,
it's dangerous either way. We have to always try to keep an eye out for
yeah,
that
I think I
that
also,
lighthouse in the
I'm thinking
middle.
like, looking back on my journey of like, I think I leaned too hard at the business side of things at one point because I was in a band that was pretty successful. So like the band was more successful than my audio business. I'm like, okay, well, why are we not, like let's just like lean harder into the business thing with the studio stuff, when I maybe wasn't as ready as I thought I was in terms of my skill set of like actually like doing the work. And I think I think you just need like a self-awareness of
Yeah,
where things stand for you, also. So you can't just like, yeah,
yeah,
don't just like lean hard unless you're really sure of where you're at. And like, but yeah, always work on both sides. Like you just have to work
yeah,
on all the things at the same time. It's like you can't just do leg days. You also have to do, whatever,
yeah,
chest days or whatever, like upper body days and
yeah.
whatever it is at the
That was
gym.
a
I don't know. Somebody,
so I was gonna say, like, I'm the first person to say that I don't go to the gym all the time, but I feel like at least I can like pretend. I can like hide it by just only showing my head on screen, right? But you said you can't only do leg day, and I feel like
Oh,
canonically,
right.
leg day is the thing everybody skips. So I think you just kind of outed
I only
yourself
do
as,
no.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like it's like I like I
Well,
love
I
eating
have a broken
human food.
finger,
I
so
mean
all I can do
food.
is
Like
leg stuff if I
like
wanted to,
okay,
which I don't. So I'm not doing either.
okay, okay.
Just so the audience knows.
You have an excuse. Okay. Um uh, do you want to I mean
Yeah.
that should
Well,
we
maybe we could
wrap
just
this
like
one or
harp
do you
on
want to
20.
do you have more to say?
Yeah, it was great.
I just feel like
Is
that
there
was
anything
like
else we could maybe just dig into about 2024 specifically, and maybe that you're thinking about that I'm not thinking about, or that I'm thinking about that you're not thinking about? Okay, so let me tee something up.
I know what I can say. Okay. Yeah, and
Amazing. Well,
okay.
I think we've given the audience like a lot to think about in terms of like doing both those things, which is interesting that like this is where we came to from like the beginning of this episode. But because you were insistent of framing this as like in 2024, like if younger Carl and younger Ben were around starting off today, like do you have any like other insights about maybe an opportunity or things to do differently specifically in 2024 versus the aughts?
Honestly, I feel like my advice to always try to strike that balance between learning the music and learning the business, I think that applies whether it was 2003 or 2024. I think what would have changed is the specific, context and like the things that you'd be learning and the things that you'd be doing would be different. Like the musical styles I'd be learning in 2003 or like the technology I'd be learning about in 2003 is very different. The economy is very different than it was. The I mean, gosh, like so much about business in general has changed, at least even if just in lots and lots of nuances since 2003. So I feel like the actual stuff that I would be learning then versus stuff I'd be learning now would be different. But I think still the idea of trying to always maintain that balance, that's I think that kind of holds through. And I feel like that lighthouse I was talking about, like always trying to kind of like keep that balance on the horizon. I feel like that lighthouse would
Yeah.
still be standing. Maybe the shape of the beach change. I don't know. That's
Yeah.
I'm mixing metaphors, but you know what I mean. Like I think the specifics of what we would learn would be different because me going back and saying 2003, Carl, like, dude, spend more time working on your social media presence so you can attract clients. Like that wasn't a thing. So like couldn't I couldn't do that. So obviously that's something that 2024 Carl could learn from. But I
Yeah.
feel like the specifics are much less
Yeah.
important than the philosophy and
Yeah. And I think
the goal of
in many
striking that
ways,
balance.
people starting today have it much better than we did because like I literally read books to like learn about this stuff because I didn't know where else to turn. Like I literally showed up in Barnes and Noble and bought a book. You know what I mean? And so everybody like YouTube was barely a thing when I got started, and like it's just crazy the amount of resources people have access to. And with the internet and with social media the way it is today in 2024 versus in 2009, 10, yeah, it's just a different world. Specifically when I was starting production, like
Yeah.
yeah, you have access to everybody now, and I didn't back then. So like you can, and people are really into niche music. You could just like you could find your community, and you could find the musicians to connect with that will hopefully become a part of that like scene or that like creative, group that you're hopefully creating and building and rising tides together, etc. So if I'm making sense. So you just like the opportunity is so boundless now compared to what it was. So
Yeah.
just take advantage of it, dig in, and like, yeah, the world's your oyster. Yeah, this is great. I think
Okay.
there's a lot to think about, and I'm definitely my brain is percolating. We've been, you've been doing this since 2003. I've been doing since 2010. So and I'm thinking about it now. So like, yeah, this is great information for the people. Hopefully they can glean something, and hopefully they don't lean too hard in one way or another, and they can find that healthy balance between the art and the business, and make art of their dreams and get paid for it eventually, and hopefully soon.
Yeah, because that balance is achievable, and I think that's something that I wish more people knew. It's not easy, it takes thought and intention,
Amazing.
but it's absolutely doable.
Hopefully I'll find that balance eventually, Carl.
So so yeah, I hope so too. I feel like I'm always kind of getting real close to falling down the hill.
We have seasons.
One side or the other. But no, it's a lifelong. You have seasons. It's a lifelong challenge, because I guess the more you learn about one, the more you need to learn about the other to kind of balance it out. But Ben, you're the man. I'm always so thankful to be on these episodes with you. I'm still so thankful that you asked me to be your
appreciate you,
co-host,
Carl. Thank you for bearing with me. And yeah, this is really nice to just get on the mic with just you. And I almost feel like we should have done like almost like a Gavi, you could leave this in, just like, hey, we just did 4 interviews together. That was cool. And yeah, it was 4.
Yeah,
it was Nick.
Was it 4?
Dana.
4?
Dave and Matt.
Dave and yeah.
It's been a minute.
Oh yeah, it has been a minute since we've done just.
I'm enjoying the interviews also, but it's like a different dynamic, like this is like comfortable, it's like nice to like. I was so comfortable interviewing guests, but now I got comfortable just talking to Carl, and now we got guests again, so it's like an interesting switch up. But yeah, this is fun, and the interviews were also great. Like, I don't know, I'm having a good time with all of it. So thanks for being a part of the team.
Me too. I'm of course, and I'm excited for the next batch of interviews we're doing. I don't know.
Don't tell the audience,
because we haven't scheduled them yet. Bye, Ben.
Bye, Carl.